Hi, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Day 51, or as I like to call it, the next 50 days. Before we get rolling tonight, of course, there is the t-shirt. Today's t-shirt is Impersonate. Picture of Dalek dressed as the Doctor. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it, but one of the things that I've been going through this entire journey so far are those days where I feel like I'm nowhere near a real singer and I don't know why I'm doing this. Imposter syndrome. But imposter syndrome is a natural path that you just recognize that you are just being the best you can be and don't sweat it. Don't look to the final answer while you're still on the path. But yeah, I have gotten it from time to time so far in this journey. Now, honestly, after yesterday's giant "I have finally heard it" episode, I probably should have worn something incredibly symbolic or dramatic today. Instead, however, I am under the weather. I am running partially on stubbornness and partially on Red Bull. And I am wearing a t-shirt that mostly passes the test of clean, emotionally acceptable, and YouTube won't balk. Honestly, that kind of feels like the correct emotional tone for today. Today ended up being much quieter externally than yesterday. But internally, I think it may have been one of those, again, important days, but this time in consolidation. The brain is trying to figure out if what I did yesterday was real, or was it reproducible? Was it just surviving? Or was it just one great sugar rush? Honestly, this morning's brighter session felt almost exactly like that. It was not a push harder session. It wasn't a prove it again session. It was more like carefully walking back into the room and saying, okay, what exactly did happen yesterday? And the weird thing is, the answer increasingly seems to be something in the overall structure is changing and adapting. Now, I want to be careful here because I don't want to accidentally start talking like I have solved singing. Checkmark next thing. Trust me, no, that's new. But one of the biggest things changing for me lately is that I'm no longer just listening for the notes or the support or the phrasing or any of the isolated emotional moments. I am increasingly hearing whether there is one continuous energetic line traveling underneath the entire structure. Yep, it has truly been a once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. So that was all over today's brighter session. The role itself is becoming increasingly understandable internally. But weirdly enough, the things exposing whether the continuity is truly holding together are still some tiny little words. Gotta is still causing trouble. There's the word Rome that starts the whole thing off. And I thank Rome for starting me down the path of, oh, that's what I've been missing. But they keep stepping outside the continuity like they're trying to leave the group project a little early. What's fascinating is that the words themselves aren't really the problem anymore. The problem is whether the energy line survives traveling through those words. Because if the continuity underneath the phrases stays alive, the words behave more correctly and automatically. But the moment that energy disconnects just a little bit, everything starts turning back into what it was before. A piece of that, a part of that, and can I get this to connect to that? Honestly, I think that's one of the biggest shifts happening lately. I'm no longer evaluating, did I survive that piece? I'm increasingly evaluating, did that thread stay tied to both ends while the phrase traveled through the structure? And that is a very different listening experience. Yesterday, I talked about finally understanding the difference between listening and then actually hearing. Today, honestly, felt like the first quieter day where I could start walking around inside the realization a little instead of just staring at it in shock. And one of the really strange things is that once I started hearing that continuous energetic line underneath the phrase structure, I suddenly started hearing performances differently altogether. Not good phrase or good support or good emotional push or even a good note, because now what I hear is, does the energy sail into the phrase, travel through, and then sail out of the phrase without breaking apart? And I'm really hearing that a lot now. And having that line really makes some of the other things less like they're incorrect, more like they are variations that are intentional. There are things that still are incorrect, but it almost opens up a little leeway on things. So that's how it's working in my head right now. And honestly, it's beginning to change the way I am performing the piece now. Earlier in this project, singing often felt like build this, hold that, push this, hold support, etc. And don't lose support and find your way home again. So now it increasingly feels more like trying to keep one continuous rail line alive underneath the entire structure while the performance rides on top of it. There is still very, very unstable scaffolding. But the important thing is that the entire bridge no longer immediately falls into the river every time one section shakes. I'd say emotionally that's a huge change, because earlier in the project, that unstable moment would just throw me off and I would not make it through the rest of the phrase with the same control. Now, the instability is feeling more like, okay, that section still needs adjustment. It's a much calmer response to the voice. Honestly, I think part of why this entire thing feels as natural to me in my head is because I, in a way, have been reverse engineering systems since I was a kid. This may be the point where people watching are going to go, oh, that explains it. So I have to tell a story that's completely off, but hopefully the connection will make sense. When I was a kid, my first computer was an Apple II. Yes, I'm that old. One weekend, one of the first things I did was take the entire thing apart. Had a screwdriver. If I could unscrew it, I took it apart. I don't even remember why I did it, but curiosity. Now, what was it? Was it science, engineering, discovery, exploration, pure stupidity? I don't know. But from my mother's perspective, this was apparently a small child destroying a very expensive object and dribbling money all over the floor. She walked into the room after I had basically disassembled the entire computer, and, well, she absolutely panicked. She told me she was going to call my father so that he could come home and yell at me. And she storms out and goes downstairs. About half an hour later, both of them walk into my room. I'm sitting there at the computer just typing away while it's fully running again. My mom just short-circuited. Sputtering, and just... it's, I think, one of the first times... it's one of the first times she threw an F-bomb at me. It's not typically said to 12-year-olds, but stomps out. My father, who was also a bit of a gadget freak, looks over at me and goes, "Cute, very clever. You got everything back together." And I opened a little drawer under my desk and pulled out 3 tiny pieces and said, "Everything's back together except these pieces. I couldn't figure out where they went, but everything seems to be running fine, so I guess I don't really need them." And my father laughed and walked out of the room. And I sort of left to my own devices with a computer after that. But I think that story kind of parallels what this project right at this phase is. Because increasingly, this whole vocal journey feels less like trying to make singing happen and more like understanding the system, the parts, pulling the parts apart, identifying them, putting them back together in a better way. And maybe in the process, leave out 3 pieces that are things like flat notes. And the really strange part lately is that the system increasingly seems to want to organize itself correctly as long as I stop fighting it. Unfortunately, both systems want to organize themselves correctly. When I would focus the energy and keep it straight, my performance went sort of flat. When I tried to put emotional interpretation into it, I fell off the line of energy. And after doing that 2 or 3 times, I just stood there. I looked at the computer and I said something along the lines. Actually, I've written this down. All right, kids, we're in a wrestling match. In this corner, weighing in at solid energy, we have continuity. And in this corner, weighing in theatrical background, we have interpretation. And that's exactly what it felt like, because I focused one, the other one went down. The trick increasingly seems to be not letting either side throw the other one out of the ring. Oh, great, now I'm seeing sumo wrestling and it's gotten worse. That's what is new right now. The earlier sessions often behaved like something activates and the other system collapses. Now it increasingly feels possible that they may be learning to coexist long enough to support each other, but right now to get there, they're competing for control. And honestly, that may quietly be one of the biggest discoveries in the whole project so far. Now, all of that said, my body is also very clearly informing me today. Congratulations on your breakthrough. Please go sit down now. Because I am definitely under the weather today. And because of that, I actually didn't do a session on Boulevard today. I think it was a correct call. I don't really think it was my subconscious going, don't wanna. But I took things easier today. As always, progress comes from not forcing things. And I felt under the weather, so I wasn't going to try to push on Boulevard today. If the entire philosophy of the last couple weeks keeps becoming maintain continuity, stop gripping the mechanism, and allow the structure to organize itself, then I probably need to apply that same set of thinking to the larger process as well. Now, not every day needs to become push harder, prove it again, rebuild, take the car apart, put the car together, throw yourself into an unstable zone. Sometimes the healthier thing is observe, consolidate, recover. Let everything absorb what's coming in before you start using it. I mean, in general, when you glue two things together, you try to put them into a vise until they've set. But the lessons just seem to work both on the micro level as well as the macro level. And this day may have kind of crept across to be one of those. Today was definitely smaller in exercise than yesterday. Inside, it really feels more and more like things are becoming recognizable. Still unstable in places, still under construction, still needs my attention, still unstable as a singer, but recognizable. And that may be one of the most encouraging feelings I've had in this whole journey so far. Anyway, the voice is going already. Thank you, as always, for following along with this project. I will probably be trying to introduce something less singing and more arrangement-wise in the near future, so that when I have these down days, I can still be doing something because, well, that's the kind of brain I have. I'm sort of looking for pieces now that I can find a way to arrange for performance as an a cappella group, even though I have no clue how to arrange. So that's on the near periphery. And so many people really like the theatrical deep dive into Brighter. So I am going to start looking at some of the other pieces. I'll probably actually go back to season 1, because that way I run a lower risk of spoilers. But I guarantee you, when season 3 comes out, I am definitely going to be as close to that one as I can. Okay, I could go on about that for another half hour, and I think I've covered the important stuff. So, tomorrow becomes day 52. Wow. So, until tomorrow, later.